Hi, everyone. This is Anne Dilker, and today's interview is with Heather Collin, and this is our very first international interview. Heather is joining us from South Africa. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, Anne.
Tell us again where in South Africa you're located.
I'm in a town called Benoni, which is about 15 kilometers from the airport, known as the Oliver Tambo or OR Tambo International Airport. It's also, I suppose you could consider it a suburb of Johannesburg.
Okay, that's good to know. That sort of gives us a reference because it's a big country.
It's a fairly big country, yes.
Well, we've been looking at some of your work, and I have to tell you, I am not a seed beater, but I am intrigued by what you're doing. Can you tell me how it is you even got started doing this?
Oh, yes. Okay, so my family know me very well as to, I always try something, and within 6 months I get bored. So I was at that stage of being bored. It was around about March 2007. My mum was doing stringing. So I looked at that, I thought, I'll give that a try. Did the usual, spent too much money, and within 2 days, not 6 months, within 2 days, I absolutely knew that I couldn't do that. So I did some research on the internet. It's the first time I really put the internet to good use, actually, when I think about it. I researched the stitches, bead weaving stitches, and the first stitch I learned was peyote. I really battled with it. I couldn't get to grips with it. And I was working with size 15 seed beads. And any of the beaders out there know it's a very difficult bead to start with. But I started with the, peyote stitch. I then got introduced to somebody.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, let me just turn this off.
Yeah. I know it's not me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, so you were saying that your mother was stringing?
My mom was doing stringing, and it looked interesting. So, I thought I'd give that a try. Got bored in 2 days, decided I liked the idea of the beading, and I researched, and it probably would have been a Beaten Button or a Beading Daily, one of those websites that I found, and saw peyote, taught myself the peyote. I really battled with it, but I got it.
Well, peyote is a great place to start, but
yeah.
How is it that you even just started with 15s? I mean, were they something that your mother just had hanging around?
I went, one of the bead shops that did exist around at the time, I went in there, and it turned, they were actually Toho, funny enough, in a little packet. I think it was probably the color that drew me, which was turquoise. It was the color, and I knew nothing about. I just knew I needed small beads, and that's how I happened to have 15s. And only when I bought size 11s did I realize, or the trauma I put myself through so unnecessarily. But anyway, I managed to do it, and I beaded about an inch. But I could tell you, I was so impressed when I got it right. And then I think I did. It was actually 2-drop peyote, because that single drop really, really frustrated me. Nothing made sense. And I was trying to read a graft as well. And they were telling me I was stringing on the first 2 rows. And I sort of looked at what I had in front of me. I said, where's the 2 rows? Suddenly I'm on row 3, and I couldn't understand it. Of course, now I do.
And you were taking this primarily just from online tutorials. You didn't actually have someone sitting with you walking you through this.
I taught myself. I then was introduced to a woman who lives not far from me, who'd been beading. And of course, when I saw her beadwork, and she was a beader that wasn't a designer, but she could bead very well following somebody else's pattern. And I was majorly impressed. And she was doing spiral, which is another beginner stitch, although actually isn't that easy when you first start, because it's about it's controlling that thread and not knowing what you're doing. But she showed me a little bit of netting, and she showed me a little bit of spiral, and I took to it very quickly. And I mean, I understood it. I actually believe that beading is a mathematical thing, and I have a logical mind. So it's somehow gelled with me. Something gelled with me.
So then kind of when you were learning these other stitches, is that what got you to the point of where you said, hey, look, if I combine these stitches, I can make these patterns?
I didn't even have that thought yet. It was more about exploring and discovering. I mean, for the first month or so when I was beading, I really didn't know what I could do with this. And in fact, that's right. I think a lot of beginner beaders, certainly in 2007, 6 years ago, everybody was doing amulet bags. Do you remember those? They were like
with what?
Amulet bags.
Oh yes, the amulet bags. Yes, they were huge.
So I did a couple of those, but not by pattern, just by. I'm a very much a hands-on person, learning, trial and error. So I did a couple of those, and within that I've learned the spiral, which I used as the neck straps. It's funny, I'm remembering the things. I started looking at. I started buying the beading magazines. That's right. And I never ever beaded up anybody else's design. What I did was I would try something and I would try a section and get bored with it because now it's taking too long, but then take that section and turn it into a necklace, by just then stringing that piece and adding beads and it developed from there. And then it was a matter of, I think within that same year, I did my first, entered a competition and it was circular brick stitch.
And that was a competition in South Africa?
It was a local competition, and that is how I got to meet my other friend who owned this bead shop that I mentioned to you in our discussion. And it was a local competition, and I won it, which I was major.
You were amazed.
I was so chuffed about it. And chuffed, as I use it a lot on Facebook, chuffed is a South African terminology for seriously pleased. Overly happy, chuffed is what chuffed means. So I was very chuffed. Felt like a bit like a peacock, strutting around, very pleased with myself because I've beaten all these other people.
So once you won this competition, then where did you go?
Then the magazine that endorsed that sort of like sponsored that competition, a South African magazine, they contacted the owner of the shop that I did the competition with and asked if I would write them a pattern. And it wasn't the pattern for the piece that I won the competition with, it was for a right angle weave piece. And I could not get this right angle weave. I couldn't understand what it was about. It wouldn't work for me. I eventually did a cheats version of right angle weave. I did a simple cuff. I called it Aztec. And I didn't get paid for it, but it was all about seeing something I'd come up with in a magazine. And because I'd seen myself in the magazine, I saw an advert in the magazine, which was an advert to master peyote and herringbone. I then went and did that course. And because of the course, the part of the course was you had to design 2 pieces in each stitch, and you had to the instructions for those 2 pieces. And that, of course, is when the competitive side of me came out, because I want to make sure I'm the best. And I've got a very old graphics program on my computer, Art Explosion, which is similar to Corel, but it's very old. And I proceeded to write my patterns. And that's actually where it really started, was when it was a combination of my graphics side, my organization side, the getting these beads to do certain things. That's when it really took on that sort of love for the bead. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you, do you or have you actually sold your finished pieces?
I have.
You do?
Yes, I don't. I've only sold one overseas to a customer in America, but the thing of posting anything out, I had this fear that people are not going to receive something, and I'm not going to charge a small amount for my finished items, as in the jewelry that I make. So I rather sell the finished pieces here in South Africa, because at the end of the day, they're not my source of income.
Well, how did you get to the fact of this whole providing the instructions and the patterns?
Yeah.
Did people just see your finished pieces and say, hey, how did you do that?
Yeah. Well, what happened was, I always believe you sometimes you set things in place ahead of time, not realizing what you're doing. And once I finished these 2 courses, one of the pieces, my herringbone pattern was Anastasia, which is on Etsy. You can see it on Etsy.
Actually, I've seen that one.
Yeah, and I had a photograph of it on Facebook, and I'd started gathering sort of friends, all in the beading community, because obviously that's my interest now, and I want to see other beaders work in it. And it was a very well-known beader who actually on Facebook said to me, "I love this piece, and do you have a pattern?" I said, "Actually, I do." Because I've written it. I said, "I do." And she said to me, "Well, how much is it?" I said, and I sucked my thumb and I said $20 because I didn't have a clue. She said, okay,
and she said,
"Where's your website?" I said, "I don't have one." I said, "But I have got a PayPal account. And I know that I can invoice you," which I did. Suddenly 2 other people asked me for the pattern. Then I thought, okay, now I've got to go and do something. And then I went and I discovered I had actually opened up an Etsy shop 6 months before. Why, I don't know. I think it was I was considering selling my jewelry. So I'd already set up the shop. And I started loading my patterns. It was the 3rd of December 2010. And as I started loading them up, I think I had 12 patterns at that stage. As I loaded the patterns, they started selling that same day. So it was just one of those things.
So it was just a magic moment for you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the Anastasia pattern right now, and it is absolutely exquisite. And you're telling me that this is one of the first designs that you put out there.
Yes, but you know what? If you must understand something. You're probably going to ask me my design process later, so we won't go into that. The idea doesn't just come. Not for me. There's no such thing. I am very much a what if. And I've got a very, very good friend who I've pulled in to do beading as well. Mm-hmm. And I'll be doing something, and I normally will bead up a whole lot of elements. And then she'll come. In fact, I've got 2 friends that do this. They come and play with my UFOs. Right. And then they put things what they see. And then it's a combination of what they see, and then I see see what they see, but I see it slightly differently.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
It's not just the path. So I have assistance, if you want, or for want of a better word, I do get assistance in what happens. Okay. So yes, that was one of my pieces, but it's actually a very, very simple. It's the basic, simple elements that are being repeated.
Right. I can see that. Now, before you started beading, what other kinds of crafts or art were you involved in?
Oh, okay. Let me try to think. I'm sitting in my dining room at the moment, but in my studio, I can do Zen tangling. I've made pod lamps. If you go onto my Facebook page, you'll see my art. I've got 1 or 2 photographs of lamps that I've made. They're made from the queen palm tree, and it's the outer leaves that fall off and dry. And it's a whole big process, but I've made lamps. I've either been gardening, I've been baking, I've been sewing clothes, or I've been anything I've tried, but it's always 6 months later, I'm bored. Or
I understand that.
Sell stuff, recover my costs, keep the rest, and then move on to the next thing.
So jewelry making, specifically with beads, is one of these things that's actually captured your attention span for a longer point of time.
Yes.
Because it is infinite what you can do with this.
It is, and there's so many ways that you can work beadwork. There's the women that do the bead embroidery, who I'm always in awe of because it's just so beautiful and textured and deep, or the bags. I look at the Russian beaders and you sort of like want to just fold everything up and put it away and say, okay, I'll bow down to you and I give up and goodbye. I'm going to go and find something else now, because they are brilliant. They
are brilliant.
So, I think the beading also does teach you to, don't compare yourself to other people. You can't. To try and find your own voice. And it's not difficult. It's not easy, should I say, because the more you bead, the longer you've been around, the more beadwork you see, the more you see you see similarities in amongst the beaders as well. We all get influenced. So, just to maintain that sort of stand out in the crowd is quite difficult as well. But
right.
yes, it certainly has captured me, and I do love doing it.
Right. Have you looked at some of the pieces that were on the Battle of the Beadsmith? When you mentioned the Russians and the Ukrainians, I know a lot of those photographs are just outstanding.
I had a napkin at hand because I drooled, and it was just amazing. There was incredible work. And in fact, the winner of that last battle, her piece was done in my ultimate stitch, which is cubic right angle weave.
There you go.
Mm.
Well, let me get down to a couple of final questions here with you. We need to wrap this up. How did you come up with Studio 183 as your business name?
Because my street address is 183 Elston Avenue. I live
there
in
you go.
Number 183. Keep it simple. Same as my email address is Dreamweavers 2010. 2010 was the year that I officially started selling my patterns. So there's always, I'm trying to keep a link. I just mustn't move.
That's really great. Yeah. Well, Heather, it has been an absolute delight to have you with us today, and I would encourage everyone who is either listening to or reading this interview that you hop on over to Heather's either Facebook page or especially her Etsy store, which is Heather. Is it 183 Studio at Etsy?
Gee, hold on. Now you're asking me. These are things that
I caught you off guard.
Yeah, you did. I've also got a personal website, but I don't get all. It should be. Let me see here. No, that's Artfire.
Well, you can share with us any contact information you would like.
Well, the Etsy store. I think Studio 183 is the name of the shop. Studio 183, and they should find it. But
Studio 183 at Etsy.com.
And if they just look up Heather Collin on Facebook, then you'll find my contact details there as well. So,
okay, and it's Collin with no S on the end, so it's Collin.
Correct.
Right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a true delight.
My pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.